like jump in. It's right at 2:30. And this is going to be like fast and furious, but it is 15 like power minutes on how to use these little cards, these leveled cards. Okay, so they're called text complexity cards. So we have the English versions, or what I'm going to use right now, but those of you who work at Spanish Immersion know that these are all in Spanish as well. They were floating around today, but if you didn't get a copy, you'll want to go back to my Padlet and make sure that you get that from the Padlet. So one of the things you're going to notice about these cards is that down in the corner of the cards, it'll tell you the level band. So one of the things at Teachers College, we don't get too hung up on like specific levels, like if you're a U versus a V. Like what we kind of care about is in this like UV band, UVW band. Everything that you're working on is really the same. Even though the books might get a little more challenging as you move up the band, all of the work that you're doing, like the comprehension work, it's all exactly the same. Okay. And primarily what you do with these cards literally are that, like you do comprehension work with the cards. The cards are banded, so you're going to have KLM, NOPQ, RST, UVW, and XYZ. And all of the cards have the exact same corner. So like if I'm at KLM or if I'm in XYZ, everybody has the same corner: character, feelings, emotion, traits, and change. Okay, and so all the categories are going to be exactly the same. So kids can be sitting right next to each other, and somebody can have the KLM chart and somebody can have the XYZ, and all of their headings are going to be exactly the same. I think this really changes how we ask kids to like, at the end of our workshop, sometimes we'll want to do like a little assignment, even though we're not supposed to. Sometimes we'll want to tell kids like to work on setting. And instead of giving the kids something specific to do with setting, I will say to kids like, today, as you're in reading workshop, I want you to pay close attention to setting. You might even get out your text cards and take a look at the work that you should be doing around setting. See, that way your XYZ kids, they have really complicated work here, and your KLMs, it says, where does the story take place? Okay, so that really allows like a little differentiation, like for each kid individually. Okay, so let's take a kind of a look at another way that kids might store those. So they can certainly be like, they can have the card. They can even have like an abbreviated or smaller version of the card. When you print them out, grab one for you guys. You can actually print them smaller. They don't have to have like the jumbo card. Or you can put them on a ring. Okay, and the nice thing about putting them on a ring is that you can have kids like, what are you going to work on today? Turn and tell your partner. They can literally like pick something versus here, you know, but we can do goal setting with here too, because we can always just say like, you know, highlight what you're going to be working on for the next couple of days, or highlight the work that you plan to do today, or mark it with your goal card. What's the work that you want to do today? Okay, we sometimes call that a work plan, like just make a plan for what it is you're going to do today. In your teacher evaluation, there's a whole piece on like goal setting. So if you think of this as a goal setting chart where kids are picking what's their goal. Now, sometimes I take these and I will use these for different things, like, and we're going to look at some things that I've used them for. Like literally for me, this has nothing to do with children. Like, it's for me. This is my little conferring guide. So on the back, it says KLM, NOPQ. So maybe I don't know the book you're reading, but if I know the level band, I would know what kind of work to do with you in that book, or what kind of work to do with your club. Okay, so this becomes important because, like, for example, symbolism really doesn't start to show up in books until really kind of right in here, which is UVW. well, maybe I need a reminder of that because that's not like the first thing I think of. Okay, so they can be a really strong conferring guide. These cards can also be really good for kids in their book clubs. So if you know a book club is like working on KLM or a book club is in that NOPQ, you put their cards in an envelope. I'm kind of obsessed with these little mini envelopes too. But you give them their cards, and then the way that they do this is they put out what's the work your club is going to talk about today. Okay, and they can do these as a deck. Sometimes we offer it as a game that you're like, okay, what'd you guys get? Plot structure. We need to think today about which problems get solved and which ones don't. And kids can play that also with their partnership, right? They don't have to just play it in a club. If you had two kids in a partnership reading the same book, they could use the club cards. Now, sometimes you might want kids to store the club cards in their notebooks. And if you want that, this is just, it's called washi tape. It's kind of like painter's tape. And a lot of times I just have kids stick the envelopes right in their notebook. So it's all in one place, right? You're just gonna kind of go like this. And then you're like, boom, they got to put like a little fun part in their notebook. You can use these in their notebook. Like if you're telling kids, I know a lot of us spend a lot of time making like little menus of things that kids could do in their notebooks. You don't need to spend time making it. Like just use the cards and be like, here's the work that you need to be doing in your notebook. Think about what band the kids are at and give them this menu to put in their book. And then I just add this, like I always have kids, if they do any of this work, to put the date. Okay, so that they can start to see which ones they're favoring versus which ones they're not doing. In a conference or a small group, you can take any one of these pieces and teach kids how they could set their notebook page up to do that work. So this one was, think about which problems get solved and which ones don't. And I was thinking that maybe they could set their notebook up where they write their problem. And then as they either get solved or gets unresolved, they kind of move the Post-it over was kind of what I was thinking. But like maybe they need an idea on how to set their notebook page up to do this work. Sometimes you might have a book club that is got a really, like they're really not doing the kind of work you were hoping for. So you might set up one individual child as the recorder, and you might have them make a tally mark every time they hear their group doing any one of these things. And then at the end of the club, they look at where they did not get a whole lot of tally marks, and they set a goal for their club work tomorrow. You might have them tape one of the pieces onto the top of their book and then actually keep track of the work that they're doing in their book, like because it's right on top. Again, this is the washi tape, so that's painter's tape. And you can see here, this one, they're just tallying. This one, it's times when you were thinking, times when they were speaking, times when they were writing. So this was, this one is easy to get, but this one would have to be like with a partner or a small group. Okay. I know some of you earlier, little side note, were asking me about some series for low kids, but they're Quix, Q-U-I-X. They're called Fast Fun Reads, which I think is cool. That's a way to say like really easy series books. But if you sell them to big kids by saying they're just like fast fun reads. Okay, so that's cool. Here, okay, this is the same kind of idea. Again, this is all like one level card where you just have them take their paper clip and kind of point at like, well, what's the work that you're going to do today? What I really like about this is a bookmark. goes into your book, therefore it goes home with you. We have a couple more minutes so I can show you just like a few more ways that you can use these cards. So you can use the cards to start to think about oral language and sentence starters. So what this says here is notice how characters act on the outside, what fits on the inside, how they feel on the inside. Ask how understanding the character helps you reflect on the conflict. Be alert and changes over time. And so I asked myself, like, if I was going to do that work, what would the little sentence starters be that would get me going? And you can build those sentence starters because a lot of times partnerships and clubs, they just need help kind of starting to think this way, right? Not just talking that way. Help just like getting started. You can see these. And I don't type these. I always just handwrite them. And I always put some blanks in there so that if kids can think of some other ways, which they always do, to get started doing this work, that we can add more. Sometimes you might want to think of this as a read aloud guide. So you might want to think of like your own read aloud that you're doing. What level is this read aloud that you're doing? So for me, this particular one was a UVW. So I went and got the UVW cards and I put them in my book so that as I'm doing work in this book, I'd make sure to stop and do the work that UVW readers should be doing in their books. And again, it's character work. So it's like, even if you have a KLM student, like they're still going to be doing that same work. It's just going to be a little different level. Okay. You might use this for data collection, write down the names on here of kids that need help with certain work. And then finally, I would use this to help make a reader famous. So when you're thinking about your share time and you're thinking about like, well, I don't know really what to do during that time, you might look for somebody that's doing some of these things and highlight that. So the way that I would say that is something like this. This is RST. And RST needs to really track multiple themes through stories. So I might be like, you guys, I just have to share with you Kristen's notebook because Kristen started a page where she's tracking themes through stories. And like, what a great idea this is. And I show her notebook page and how she started to set it up. But I didn't know what to share with my class until I kind of looked at these. And for shares, I kind of try to look up like RST. I'd be thinking like, okay, well, most of my classes at NOPQ, so I'm going to try to highlight some of the stuff from RST so that I can like start pushing my kids kind of toward that direction. I think these can be especially helpful when you have kids that struggle or when you have kids that are super high. Because sometimes we don't know like what's the next steps with them. And we could just go to the level band card and use it. These are like a super great tool, really though, for meeting the needs of all kids.